Hi, my name is Samantha Alexander, and my group was myself, Julia Granado, and Grace Kennedy, and our supervisor was Matthew Cuddington, or Mr. C. Our capstone project was titled The Speech and Dental Interface. So we chose our topic because, we wanted to do a service learning project, and we knew we wanted to create something that we knew there was a need for. And Julia, having two parents that are dentists, knows a lot of dental and orthodontic professionals who have expressed how they were never really educated on speech sound development and how that sort of relates to their field. So we wanted to create a resource for those professionals because dentists and orthodontists are valuable members of our interdisciplinary team that we will be working with as future SLPs. And they will also serve a role in the identification and treatment of speech and language disorders in children. So, given the nature of articulation, any change in the oral cavity is ultimately going to affect speech production. Um, Changes in the oral cavity structure or the addition of orthodontic and dental appliances both will alter the oral cavity in ways in which those professionals might not have been educated on. So we wanted to sort of do our research and combine that information so that those professionals can be more aware of maybe what to warn patients and their families about, but also identify speech and language disorders in general so that they can refer patients to speech language pathology as needed. So we overall created a brochure titled The Speech and Dental Interface that we ended up distributing to dentists and orthodontists in several different locations so that they can use this as a reference in their practice, and also give them a better understanding of our field as a whole and sort of how they tie into that.
So, I'm Julia, and as Sammy was saying, both my parents were dentists, and I was actually kind of a direct product of speech sounds being affected growing up. I actually had a very high palate, and it was my grandma, who was an elementary school teacher, who noticed that my speech was a little off. And so that kind of sparked my parents' interest, and they got me set up with a maxillary palate expander, and that actually helped my speech develop and become more normal sounding. But anyways, as we created this brochure for our project, we started to think about how we wanted to send it out. We considered our options of sending a paper copy or sending a PDF version, and we asked a couple dentists and orthodontists how they would like to receive this information, and pretty much unanimously they said they would prefer to have a physical copy with the option to have a PDF version if needed later on. So that's exactly what we did. We created our brochure, which Grace will touch on a little bit later in our talk. But anyways, we figured out that we wanted to send this brochure to areas that were kind of surrounding UNC Greensboro, but Sammy, Grace, and myself were all in different locations. So we decided to send our brochures to North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia, specifically in the areas of Charlotte, Greensboro, Wilmington, and North Carolina. And then in South Carolina, we sent it to Greenville and surrounding areas, and Gainesville and Fairfax for Virginia. So, along with our brochure, we created a letter that kind of explained our purpose and went a little bit more in depth as to why we were sending this information out. So, here is our example of our letter. We introduced ourselves and we explained that we were completing a capstone project to provide information to pediatric dentists and orthodontists and wanted to educate them on the importance of understanding speech sound development and how our two fields kind of play a role with each other. And specifically with COVID coming into play over the last 2 years, we have noticed that there have been an increase in speech and language delays with children, and so we thought that this information would be specifically very important to send out around this time to help pediatric dentists and orthodontists understand how they can help make referrals to catch these delays in children. So we sent this letter along with our brochure, and we also gave the option for these different practices to reach out to us. We created a Gmail account, and they can request a PDF version, and we'll send them one, however many they need.
Awesome. So I'm going to give you an overview of the content that's in our brochure and its layout. So if you were physically holding the brochure, the front page would be here. The speech and dental interface are the title of our capstone. And if you're wondering what it's about when you're holding it, it says, how does the oral cavity structure or the addition of orthodontic and dental appliances affect speech? So that opens the gate to our whole capstone and everything we researched. And then if you go to the next page, you can see the first page once you open it. That kind of gives the dentists and orthodontists of the speech sound development, kind of that overview. So you probably are familiar with this chart of the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and what sounds should be developed at that time. This chart and this speech sound development norms are changing as of fall 2022, but because of what the norms are now, this is what we included. But we did also mention that this will be changing in the brochure. So that's something that dentists and orthodontists are probably not too familiar with, but that kind of is where our professions overlap. So if they notice that these children aren't producing these sounds by this age, that's the kind of referral that they can make out. We gave them information on the different consonants and vowels and where different consonants are made in the oral cavity, where different vowels are made in the oral cavity. And then on the next page, after you open it up, following that speech sound development, you have the structural imperfections of the oral cavity. So just like it says, when the dentist is assessing the oral cavity, you'll often find structural imperfections. And we listed what are some of those that they can find. So if they see a cleft palate or cleft lip, they see a tongue tie, if they notice mouth breathing, if they notice any type of malocclusion, class 1, 2, or 3, missing maxillary anterior teeth, changes in the dental arches, and even a tongue thrust. So if a dentist sees this, we kind of included a blurb about why often a referral is recommended in these cases and how our professions overlap and what they can do about it. And looking at the next page, we talk about kind of the dental and orthodontic appliances and how once those are placed, how speech sounds can sound distorted, what they might hear, and if they would go back to normal after those were removed, or do some see some residual errors. And on our last page, we have referrals and our recommendations on what they should do. So if any of these individuals present with a structural or oral imperfection, they should see a speech language pathologist in the area who is certified and trained in myofunctional therapy. And this will help with stabilizing orthodontic results and any corrections of these disorders. So yeah, this is our brochure that was printed and handed out to over 100 places. And that is it.